All right. I apologize for leaving abruptly from the last reading, which was just a few minutes ago. But when the dogs do their thing, sometimes I got to go. So I apologize, but here we are. We're picking back up. We are reading Augustine, the City of God Against the Pagans. We are in Book 7. This is chapter 22. Ah, chapter 22 of Neptune and Salacia and Venanilia. Now Neptune already had his wife Salacia, who, they say, is the lower waters of the sea. Why then was Venanilla also joined to him? For no reason, surely, for this was not necessarily for the performance of the sacred rites, other than the soul's desire to multiply the number of demons to whom it might prostitute itself. But let us now examine an interpretation which has been put forth by Varro, who seems to silence our condemnation by rendering a satisfactory account of this splendid theology. Venilia, he says, is the wave which comes to the shore. Salacia, which means, that which returns to the sea. But why are there two goddesses when it is the same wave that comes and goes? Undoubtedly, that boils up here is the same furious lust after many gods, small g. For though the water that comes in is not different from that which goes out, the soul is now defiled by two demons, whom it has taken occasion by its vanity to invite. And when the soul goes out, it does not return. I ask thee, O Varro, or you others who have read so many of the writings of such wise men and boast that you have learned some great things, interpret this in a manner consistent. I do not say with that eternal and immutable nature which alone is God, but at any rate with the soul of the world and its parts which you regard as true gods. It is a somewhat more tolerable error that you have made that part of the soul of the world that permeates the sea into your god Neptune, small g. But is the wave which comes to the shore and then returns to the sea two parts of the world, or two parts of the soul of the world? Question mark. Which of you is so foolish as to think that this is not foolish? Why therefore have the Romans made two goddesses for you? Only because your wise forefathers had provided not that more gods, small g, should rule you, but that more demons should possess you. Demons who take delight in such vanities and falsehoods. But why has that Salacia, according to this interpretation, lost the lower part of the sea where she was placed under her husband? For when you say that she is the wave that goes out, you place her on the surface. It is perhaps that she is angry with her husband for taking Venanilla as a mistress, and so has excluded him from the upper parts of the sea? Question mark. Chapter 23. Of the earth, which Varro affirms to be a goddess, since the soul of the world, which is in his opinion God, preemanates even this lower part of its own body and imparts a divine force to it. To be sure, there is only one earth, and we see it to be full of its own creatures. Yet it is also a great mass among the elements and the lowest part of the world. Why then do our adversaries wish to say that it is a goddess? Is it because it is fruitful? Why, in that case, are men not divine itself? For it is they who make the earth fruitful by their cultivation, but by plowing it, not adorning it. They say, however, that part of the soul of the world preemanates the earth and makes it a goddess, as if it were not more evident, as a thing quite beyond question, that there is a soul in man, yet men are not held to be gods. Indeed, and this is to be more grievously lamented, men are, by a wondrous, miserable error, placed under beings who, though deemed worthy of worship and adoration, are not gods, and than whom men themselves are better. Certainly Varro, in his book concerning the select gods, affirms that there are three grades of soul in the whole of nature. First, there is that which occurs in all the parts of a living body, and which has no sensation, but the power of life only. He says that this force in our bodies preemanates the bones, the nails, and the hair. By it trees are nourished in the world, and grow even though they have no sensation, and live in a manner peculiar to themselves. The second grade of soul is that in which there is sensation, and this power extends to the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and sense of touch. The third grade of soul is the highest, and is called mind, and here intelligence prevails. All mortal creatures, apart from man, lack this grade of soul. This part of the soul of the world, Varro says, is called God, while in us it is called genius. Moreover, the stones and the earth which we see in the world, to which sensation does not extend, are like the bones and nails of God, whereas the sun, the moon, and stars that we perceive, and by which he perceives, are his senses. Again, the ether is his mind, the force of which, extending to the stars, makes them also gods. That part of it which flows through them into the earth makes the goddess Tellus, and that which flows still farther into the sea and ocean makes the god Neptune. Let Varro return, therefore, from that which he supposes to be natural theology, to which he retired to rest when he grew weary of the twistings and turnings of his argument. Let him return, I say, let him return to the civil theology, where I shall detain him for a little while in order to deal with it. I do not yet say that if the earth and stone resemble our bones and nails, they must resemble them in having no intelligence, just as they lack sensation. Nor do I say that if our bones and nails are said to have intelligence because they are in a man who has intelligence, he who says that these parts of the world are gods is as stupid as anyone would be who said that the bones and the nails in us are men. These are points which are perhaps to be discussed with the philosophers. For the time being, however, I wish to approach him as a political man. For though he may seem to have wished to lift up his head for a moment, as it were, into the freedom of natural theology, it is possible that, while still occupied with this book and concerned with its execution, he nonetheless glanced aside and spoke as he did in order that no one should believe that his ancestors or cities had been foolish in worshipping Tellus and Neptune. I say this, then, if there is a part of the soul of the world which preemanates the earth, and there is only one earth, why has it not also made only one goddess, and the one whom Varro calls Tellus? In which case, where will Orcus be, the brother of Jupiter and Neptune, where the Romans call Des Pater? Where will his wife Proserpine be, who, according to another opinion of Varro, set forth in the same book, is not the fertility of the earth, but its lower part? And if our adversaries say that a part of the soul of the world makes the god Des Pater, then it permeates the upper part of the earth and the goddess Proserpine. When it permeates the lower part, what will that Tellus be? For the whole of what Tellus was has now been divided into two parts and two gods, small g, so that no one can discover what or where a third part may be, unless, that is, someone says that the two divine beings, Orcus and Proserpine, form the one goddess Tellus, and that they are not now three, but one or two. Nonetheless, they are still called three. They are held to be three, worshipped as three, with their own altars, their own shrines, their own rites, images, and priests, and by the same token, their own false demons, who, through these things, defile the prostituted soul. Let our adversaries answer a further question. What part of the earth is preimitated by a part of the soul of the world to form the god Tellamo? None, says Varro. Rather, one and the same earth has a dual power, a masculine, which produces seed, and a feminine, which receives and nourishes it. Hence, it is called Tellus, from a female power, and Telemo from the male. Why, therefore, did the pontiffs, as Varro himself indicates, add two more and perform divine service to four gods, Tellus, Telemo, Ultor, and Rusor? We have already spoken of Tellus and Tulamo, but why Altor? Because Varro says it is from the earth that all things born are nourished, Alantor. And why Rusor? Because he says all things return again, Rusas, to the same place. Chapter 24. Of the additional names of Tellus and their meanings, which, though they signify many things, should not be thought to confirm the opinion that there are many gods, small g. By reason of this fourfold power, therefore, the one earth ought to have had four additional names, but not to have been made into four gods. The one Jupiter has many titles, and the one Juno has many titles, in all of which the manifold powers belonging to a single god or goddess are said to be expressed. This multitude of titles does not, however, make a multitude of gods. But just as sometimes the vilest women grow weary and repent of the hordes of lovers whom they have sought in their lust, so the soul, which has become vile and prostituted itself to unclean spirits, and which loves to multiply for itself gods, small g, to whom it may prostrate itself in unclean worship, sometimes also grow weary of them. For even Varro himself, as though ashamed of the swarm of divine beings, wish there to be the one goddess Tellus. They say, he remarks, that the same goddess is called the Great Mother. The drum which she holds signifies that she is the orb of the earth. The towers on her head signify towns, and she is portrayed as seated because, while all things around her move, she herself is not moved. The Romans created the galley to serve this goddess, and this signifies that those who lack seed should devote themselves to the earth, for all seeds are indeed found in the earth. They leap about before her in order to teach those who cultivate the earth that they should not sit idle, for there is always something for them to do. The sound of the cymbal signifies the action of metal tools and the work of men's hands, and the other noises produced by the business of tilling the fields. These cymbals are made of bronze, because the men of old tilled the land with bronze before iron was discovered. They placed beside her a lion. He says unloosed and tamed, in order to show that there is no kind of land so remote or so fiercely wild that it is not suitable to be tamed and brought under cultivation. Varro then goes on to say that because they gave many names and titles to Mother Tellus, it came to be believed that there were many gods, small g. They think, he says, that Tellus is ops, ops, because she is improved by work, opus, mother, because she gives birth to many things. Great, because she gives birth to food, porcupine, because fruits creep forth, prosper pant from her, Vesta, because she has a vesture of grass, and there are other goddesses, he says, who are not unreasonably identified with her. If therefore the earth is one goddess, although as we consult the truth this is certainly not the case, why do they nonetheless divide her into many? Let there be many names for one goddess, and not as many goddesses as there are names. But the authority of his mistaken forebears weighs heavily upon Varro, and compels him to have misgivings after he has expressed this opinion. For he then says, in addition, the opinion of our forebears concerning these goddesses, whom they suppose to be many, is not at odds with these remarks. But how is it not at odds with them, when it is a very different thing for one goddess to have many names and for there to be many goddesses? But it is possible, he says, for the same thing to be one, yet to have many things contained in it. There are, I grant, many things in one man, but are there for this reason many men in him? So too, if there are many things in one goddess, are there for this reason many goddesses? But let them divide, combine, multiply, replicate, and complicate as they wish. Such as the celebrated mysteries of Ptolus and a great mother, in which everything has reference to perishable seeds and to the practice of agriculture. But to the things related to this end, the drum, the towers, the galley, the insane thrashing of limbs, the noise of the cymbals, the images of lions, give anyone the promise of eternal life? The mutilated galley served the Great Mother in order to signify that those who lack seed ought to devote themselves to the earth. But is it not their own very devotion which has caused them to lack seed? For do they acquire seed when they lack it by following after the goddess? Or do they, rather by following her, lose the seed that they have? Is this an interpretation of her rights, or an indictment of them? Nor do our adversaries notice how great is the triumph of the malignant demons who have managed to exact such cruel rights without having to promise any great rewards in return. If the earth had not been a goddess, men would have laid their hands upon her in order to obtain seed from her by labor, and not upon themselves, in order to lose their seed for her sake. If the earth had not been a goddess, she would have been fruitful in the hands of others. She would not have compelled a man to be made barren by his own hands. In the festival of Liber, before the gaze of the multitude, an honest matron would crown the shameful parts of a male, while perhaps her husband stood there also blushing and perspiring, if there is any shame in mankind. At the celebration of a wedding, the new bride would be required to sit upon the shaft of Priapus. But these two things are no more than contemptible and trivial when compared with the most wicked cruelty of the rites of Tellus. In the former instances, both sexes were mocked by demonic rituals, but neither was destroyed. In the first of them, men feared the enchantment of their fields, but in the rites of Tellus, they do not fear even the amputation of their members. In the second of them, the modesty of the new bride was dishonored, but no damage was done to her fruitfulness or even her virginity, whereas in the rites of Tellus, a man's virility is amputated, and he neither becomes a woman nor remains a man. Chapter 25. The interpretation of the mutilation of Attis as represented in the doctrine of the Greek sages. Varro does not mention Attis, in commemoration of whose love the Galli mutilate themselves, nor does he seek any interpretation of him. The learned and wise Greeks, however, have by no means omitted to speak of something so holy and celebrated. Because the face of the earth is more beautiful in spring than any other season, the noble philosopher Porphyry suggests that Attis symbolizes the flowers, and that his mutilation signifies the fact that flowers must fall before the fruit comes. It is not the man himself, therefore, or the symbolic man, whom they call Attis, whom they have compared to the flowers, but his male organs. These indeed fell while he was still alive, or rather they did not fall, nor were they plucked, but were clearly torn off. But when the flower was lost, there was no subsequent fruit, rather barrenness followed. What then is the meaning of this remnant, of whatever remained after his mutilation? And what is it said to signify? To what does it refer? What interpretation is offered of it? Do not the Greeks' fruitless attempts to find an interpretation simply persuade us that what rumor reports and writing records is no more than the tale of a castrated man? Though so learned a man as not Varro was surely not unaware of this tale, and he rightly turned away from it and did not wish to speak of it. Isn't that funny? Chapter 26. of the wickedness of the rites of the Great Mother. Again, Varro did not wish to say anything of the effeminate men consecrated against all male and female decency to the same Great Mother, nor do I remember reading of them ever elsewhere. As late as yesterday, though, they were parading through the squares and streets of Carthage, with oiled hair and powdered faces, languid limbs, and feminine gait, demanding even from the tradespeople the means of continuing to live in disgrace. Interpretation failed. Reason blushed. Speech was silenced. The Great Mother has surpassed all her children in the greatness, not of her godhood, but of her iniquity. To this monster, not even the monstrousness of Janus is to be compared. Janus had a deformity only in his image, but she has a deformity in her cruel rites. Janus had parts added to him in stone, but she has men whose fleshly members have been taken away. This abomination is not suppressed even by the whoredoms of Jupiter himself, so many and so great. Though he corrupted so many women, it was only through Ganymede that he brought infamy into heaven, whereas the Great Mother, with so many infamous men making a public exhibition of themselves, has brought iniquity to earth and done injury to heaven also. Perhaps we must compare Saturn to her in respect of such abominable cruelty, or even place him before her, for it is said that he castrated his own father. In the rites of Saturn, however, though men could be slain by the hands of others, they were not called upon to mutilate themselves. Saturn devoured his children, as the poet tells, and the natural philosophers interpret this story in whatever way they wish. As the story goes, he killed them, but the Carthaginians' practice of sacrificing their children to him was not accepted by the Romans. This great mother of the gods, small g, however, has brought her eunuchs even unto the Roman temples, and has preserved that cruel practice, because it is believed that she adds to the might of the Romans by cutting off the sexual organs of men. I have to stop there, and I'm going to tell you why, guys. This may answer why, when I went to Rome, and I went through the Vatican and I guess the museum and stuff where they had all of these statues and stuff, I had said to Richard, why are their penises cut off? There's so many statues of men that their penises were cut off. Seriously, they were broken off, cut off. I don't know how else to put it. Why? I never understood that. But the women stood there all bare naked and all that. And I couldn't understand. And now I'm wondering, is it because of the Great Mother of the gods, small g? Is that why? No. The mother of harlots? The mother church? I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm just, in my head's just like spinning here, because it's like, that's a little bit weird, guys. It's just a little bit weird. All right, let me continue. Compared to this evil, what are the thefts of Mercury, the lasciviousness of Venus, the immorality and wickedness of the rest, which we could cite from books, even if they were not daily sung and danced in the theater? What are these compared to so great an evil, the magnitude of which is matched only by the greatness of the Great Mother? The Great Mother, you guys. Especially since the deeds of Mercury, Venus, and the rest are said to have been the inventions of the poets. The poets did not, however, invent the fact that their accounts of such deeds are pleasing and acceptable to the god, small g. For even if it is due to the audacity and wantonness of the poets that these things were sung or written, still, when they were added to the divine rites and honors at the command and insistence of the divine beings themselves, what was this if a criminal act of the god, small g, or rather a confession on the part of the demons and a deception of miserable men? But as to the belief that the Great Mother is properly worshipped by the consecration to her of mutilated men, the poets did not invent this. Rather, they shrank from it in horror rather than singing of it. I bet they did. Why would it be thought, then, that anyone consecrated to these select gods will live a blessed life after death, when subjugated to vile superstitions and obliged to serve unclean demons. He cannot live honestly even before his death. But all these things, Varro says, have reference to the world, mundus. Let him consider whether they do not rather refer to the unclean, immundus. Moreover, there is surely nothing in the world which cannot be referred to the world in this way. We, however, seek a mind which, confiding in the true religion, does not adore the world as its God, small g, but praises the world as God's work, for God's sake, capital G, capital G. A mind which, cleansed of all worldly defilement, comes pure to God himself, capital G, who established the world. Chapter 27. Of the inventions of the natural philosophers who neither worship the true divinity nor cultivate that worship by which the true God should be served. We see that these select gods came to, small g, came to enjoy greater renown than the rest, not, however, in order that their merits might be glorified, but so that their disgraceful acts should not be concealed. And from this consideration, it is all the more credible that they were once men. Really? Yes. This is handed down to us not only in the writings of the poets, but also in the works of the historians. For Virgil says Saturn was the first to come down from the heights of Olympus, fleeing the arms of Jupiter, and exiled, robbed of his kingdom. And the whole history of what follows in relation to this affair is told by Euphemerus, who has been translated into Latin as Enos. But since many things have been said by those who have written before us in both the Greek language and the Latin against errors of this kind, I do not think it necessary to dwell on them here. But when I consider the naturalistic explanation by which learned and acute men endeavor to turn these human affairs into things divine, I see nothing except that can be attributed to temporal and earthly temporal and earthly works, and to corporal beings, invisible perhaps, but still subject to change. And these are in no way the true God. Capital G. Now, if this symbolism were executed in a manner at least compatible with religion, it would indeed be lamentable that the true God, capital G, is not declared and proclaimed through it. But we might endure it nonetheless. We might endure it if only such filthy and wicked things were not done or commanded by means of it. But since it is a crime to worship a body or a soul in place of the true God, capital G, by whose indwelling alone the soul is made happy, how much more criminal is it to worship these things in such a way that neither the body nor the soul of the worshippers may obtain either salvation or human honor. Thus, if some element of the world or some created spirit, even though not impure or evil, is worshipped with the temple, priesthood, and sacrifice due to the true God, capital G, the worship is evil, not because the means by which it is performed are evil, but because such means ought to be used only in the worship of him to whom alone such worship and service is due. But if anyone contends that he is worshiping the one true God, capital G, that is the creator of every soul and body, with lumpish and monstrous images, with homicidal sacrifices, with the crowning of the shameful parts of the male, with prostitution for a fee, with the slashing of limbs and the cutting off of genitals, the consecration of effeminate, and the performance of impure and obscene spectacles, such a one does not sin because he worships what ought not to be worshipped. Rather, he sins by worshiping him who ought to be worshipped in a way in which he ought not to be worshipped. If, however, anyone makes use of such things, that is, base and wicked things, to worship not the true God, who is the maker of soul and body, but a creature, even though not a wicked creature, he sins against God twice. First, because he worships in place of God that which is not God, whether it be soul or body, or a soul and a body together. And second, because he worships by means of things which should not be used to worship either God or that which is not God. That makes a lot of sense there. But it is clear how, that is how wickedly and criminally our adversaries worship. What or whom they worship might have remained hidden, had not their own histories attested that those very services which are admitted to be filthy and disgraceful were rendered to divine beings who demanded them with terrible threats. As it is, however, all ambiguity is removed. It is evil demons and unclean spirits who have been invited by all this civil theology to visit senseless images and by means of them to take possession of foolish hearts. I just want to check real quick, guys, to see how far we are to book 8. It looks like we are. Let me see. Hold on 1 minute. Forgive me. Okay. Yeah, we're a little bit. I don't think I'm going to finish this book, but soon. We're almost in book 8. So here we go. Chapter 28. The teaching of Varro concerning theology is in no respect consistent with itself. What does it avail then that this most learned and acute man, Varro, should endeavor with such subtle disputation to reduce and refer all these gods to heaven and earth? He cannot do it. They flow out of his hands. They recoil. They sink and fall. When he is about to speak of females, that is goddesses, he says, as I said in the first book, dealing with places, heaven and earth are the two origins of the gods, which is why some gods are called heavenly and some earthly. I began the former book with the heaven when I spoke of Janus, whom some have said to be the heaven and the others the earth. Now, therefore, in speaking of female deities, I make a beginning with Tellus. I know how great a perplexity this greatly gifted man was suffering, for he is led by a different kind of verisimilitude to suppose that the heaven is that which acts and the earth that which is acted upon. And so he attributes a masculine power to the former and a feminine to the latter. But he does not notice that it is rather he who made both heaven and earth, who is the maker of both activity and passivity. Hence also in the preceding book, Varro similarly interprets the celebrated mysteries of the Smathothracians and promises almost with religious fervor that he will expound in writing and send to his countrymen mysteries unknown to them. For he says that he had discovered in Samothrace from many indications that one of the images were signified the heaven, another the earth, and another the forms of things which Plato calls ideas. Varro wishes it to be understood that Jupiter is the heaven, Juno the earth, and Minerva the ideas. Heaven being that by which anything is made, earth being that of which it is made, and the ideas being the form according to which it is made. I omit to mention the fact that Plato says that the ideas have such great power that even the heaven was made according to them. It is not the heaven that made anything pattern on them. I do, however, remark that in his book on the select god, small g, Varro has lost sight of the three gods, small g, in whom he has, as it were, embraced all things. For he assigns the male gods, small g, to heaven, and the female to earth, and he places among the latter Minerva, whom he had formerly set above them. Next, the male god Neptune is in the sea, which pertains to earth rather than heaven. Finally, Despater, who is called Pluto by the Greeks, is himself male and the brother of the other two. Yet he is considered to be an earth god, small g, holding the higher part of the earth and having a wife, Proserpine, in the lower part. How is it, then, that Varro can attempt to identify the gods, small g, with heaven and the goddesses with the earth? What does his argument contain which is solid, constant, sober, or definite? This Tellus is the origin of the goddesses, then, the great mother, that is, before whom arise the mad and wicked cries of the effeminate and mutilated, and of those who slash themselves and leap about. How is it, therefore, that Janus is called the head of the gods and Tellus that of the goddesses? Small g. In the one case, error does not make a single head, nor in the other does frenzy make a sane one. Why do our adversaries foolishly strive to equate these with the world? Even if they could do this, no pious man worships the world in place of the true God, But in any case, the clear truth demonstrates that they cannot do it. Let them rather refer all this to dead men and to most wicked demons, and then no doubt will remain. Chapter 29. That all the things which the natural philosophers have referred to, the world and its parts, should be ascribed to the one true God, capital G. For everything in the theology of those gods, small g, which our adversaries ascribe to the world by means of naturalistic explanations, may, without any fear of sacrilege opinion, instead be ascribed to the one true God, capital G. So when we say that, one true, we know it's God Almighty, who made the world and who is the creator of every soul and every body. We may express it thus: we worship not heaven and earth, of which two things this world consists, nor is soul or souls thought to be diffused throughout all living things, but the God who made heaven and earth and all the things in them, and who made every soul, no matter what the manner of its life, whether it lacks both sensation and reason, or only sensation or only intelligence. Chapter 30. With what piety the Creator is to be distinguished from his creatures, lest instead of one God, as many creatures be worshipped as there are works of the one Creator. I shall now begin to run through those works of the one and true God, by reason of which our adversaries have made for themselves many false gods, whose most wicked and shameful rites they endeavor to interpret as though they were honorable. We worship the God who is assigned to all the natures created by him, both the beginnings and the ends of their existing and moving, who holds, knows, and disposes the causes of things, who has established the power of seeds, who has endured those living creatures whom he has chosen with a rational soul, which is called mind, who has given us the faculty and use of speech, who has imparted the gift of foretelling the future to such spirits as he has deemed worthy, who also himself foretells the future through those whom he thinks fit, and who takes away disease through those who please him. What's the matter? Who's whining? Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to end that there. I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to pick it up in 29. No, in 30. But Little Bandit is whining. I think she's probably got to go potty. I'm so sorry, guys. So we're going to end that there until next time. Keep your eyes on Jesus and your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And let us embed the Word of God upon the tablets of our hearts, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. Have a good night. Bye-bye.